meeting to order for the Planning Commission. Roll call, please.
Sure. Chairman Bach,
Here?
Vice Chairman Dibble,
Here.
Commissioner Schrader,
Here.
Commissioner Zarguni, Commissioner Miller, Commissioner York,
Here.
Commissioner Salazar Garza is absent, Commissioner Gonzalez,
Here.
and Commissioner Mandel is absent. Quorum established.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the public comment for any general comments at this time. Would anybody wish to speak on any item that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion to approve the absences, item 3.
This Commissioner Dibble, I'll make a motion to approve Commissioner Mandel's absence in item 3.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to approval of minutes. Do I have a motion or any comments regarding minutes?
This is Commissioner Miller. I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the consent public hearing items. Before we hear that, are there any items that any commissioner would like to pull from the consent and move it to the public hearing items?
Number 11.
Yeah, I'd like number 11
All
pulled.
right, number 11, zoning, we're going to move that to off the consent, and we'll read that with the public hearing portion. So consent items 2 through 10, please.
Permission to proceed.
Please.
Thank you much. For the record, David Stallworth, Senior Planner, and calling your attention to the consent agenda, which now consists of 9 items, which are 4 of them are final plats, 3 of them are replats, 1 is a final plat with conditional approval, 1 is a time extension. The docket is as follows. First item being case number 21PL 1046. It's a replat establishing Port Aransas Cliffs, Block 808, lots 41R through 43R. The next case is 21PL 1062. It's a replat establishing Flower Bluff Estates, number 2, Block 11, Lot 4B. The next item is 21PL 1065. It's a final plat establishing Rancho Vista Subdivision, Unit 23, consisting of 13.81 acres. The next item is 21PL 1067. It's a replat establishing Flower Bluff Estates, number 2, Block 8, lots 14A and 14B. The next item is 21PL 1084. It's a final plat establishing River Ridge, Unit 4A, which consists of 12.73 acres. The next item is 21PL 1110, a final plat of Martinez Addition, Block 1, Lot 1. The next item is 21PL 1064. It's a final plat of Wildcat Industrial Park, Block 2, Lot 4, which consists of 4.26 acres. And the next 2 items is 21PL 1080. It's a final plat establishing Jade Heights. We're recommending conditional approval of that, and it consists of 23.39 acres. And the final item on the consent agenda tonight is a time extension request for Tolosa Reserve Unit 2. It's a time extension for 6 months. It was submitted on August 3rd. It expired on September 3rd. We're recommending approval for 6 months. That completes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Do we have any questions from Planning Commission for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing for items 2 through 10. Does anybody wish to comment on these items? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and entertain a motion for items 2 through 10.
Make a motion that we approve items 2 through 10 as recommended by staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to item 11. Mr. Demas.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, Andrew Demas with Development Services. So tonight we have 2 zoning cases. The first is the case 0921-01, Jurok, Hunt, and Carter. And as you'll see on the screen, we'll briefly go through the presentation. The request is from the FR Farm Rural District to the RM2 Multifamily District. This is located on Cimarron between Lipes and Yorktown. Here's an aerial view of the subject property. As you can see, there is established neighborhoods to the west and to the south, and then you have vacant tracts as you approach Lipes Boulevard, where Veterans Memorial High School is located. As you'll see on the adjacent properties, there were several previous rezoning cases in the neighborhood to some level of multifamily zoning. Starting back in 2015, you have some adjacents done in 2018, and the most recent is the property to the north, also rezoned in 2018. As land use wise, the proposed future land use is medium density residential. So if Planning Commission recommends, ultimately if City Council also recommends, it would warrant a change to the future land use map, as you'll see on the existing side, to high density residential. As far as utilities, all utilities are available and all are accessible from Cimarron Boulevard. As far as public notifications are concerned, 38 notices were sent out. We received 0 in favor and 1 in opposition as of this afternoon, which consists of 1%. Based on the information submitted and after staff analysis, we are recommending approval of the rezoning to the RM2 multifamily district. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Dibble?
On the notice, Andrew, that was sent to the residents, I guess, you know, I've heard feedback from a few of them that, you know, I don't know what the time schedule is on when they're sent out, but, you know, they started getting them last week and you know, I don't know how quickly people are checking their mail, but have we always had the same timing on what the date these go out ahead? Not this case, but any zoning case in general, I guess.
Yes, they're roughly sent 16 days in advance of the hearing before Planning Commission. So I do understand there's at times there are delays with the post office, but it's always the Friday before the packet day. So essentially, if this Friday, you're winding the clock back 2 weeks, and that is the date it's sent to meet the 16-day requirement, which is also set by state statute.
Now, the other thing was, and it was brought to my attention, that the time on the meeting was incorrect. So, because I'd heard that, I know we have changed this meeting recently to 6:30, but I think what was in the notice was a different meeting time, and I'm wondering, I think that still had the time as 5:30, and then from what I'm hearing.
Yes, the notices were sent before we found out there was going to be a standing COVID briefing. So from now on, notices will read 6:30 going forward.
Okay, I guess I'm anticipating there's going to be some comment, public comment, but anyway, just concerned me because the meeting time wasn't corrected. Did y'all send out revised notices to those homeowners, or?
As phone calls, we did receive a few phone calls, and I assured them that the meeting would be moved to 6:30 as soon as I was aware.
Okay.
Just a clarification on the distance that we're mailing. Are we changing that with any UDC amendments or anything like that? Or I know 200 foot has always been kind of comments around the city. I just wanted to.
It is absolutely an ongoing discussion because not every ring is equal, meaning sometimes there are plats that go up to 300, or in TABC cases, they're a little larger. So we're trying to find ways of standardizing. It helps our GIS department to create maps consistently, but two, we want to ensure that, you know, the right amount of people, so to speak, are notified. But I know that's always been an ongoing discussion item.
And just to add, the 200 foot is the state statute for
And
notification.
that's what I was thinking. I just know it's been a comment several times by public and so on. Mr. Dibble?
But one other question on the can you go back to the future land use
Sure.
map? But do we know when this section of the future land, when was it last updated?
So there was a combination of Plan CC done in 2016, and then most recently the Southside Area Development Plan that I believe was late 17 going into 18. So there is time that as zoning cases come in, we have a chance to correct the future land use map.
Okay, and when changes to the land use, there's no notification requirements to, I mean, when we do make a change in a master plan, I remember we ran into that on that Del Mar distributing building on Cimarron where
Yes.
You know, they bought the property one way and then somehow future land use got changed. They didn't know about it. In that case, I think we annexed it or something. But what would happen in a case like this when the future land use changes? Is there any notification to the
Yes,
homeowners?
it is tied to the zoning case. So on the text of the notice, it will include including a change to the future land use map. Other cities do have them separate to where there's one hearing for land use and one hearing for zoning. In Corpus, we have combined those two items together to make it more efficient of a process. So it is both zoning and future land use on the same notice.
And then if I'm reading this right, the existing land use, what's the existing land use on this property?
It's currently vacant.
Okay, so it's vacant, and then medium density residential would be the same
Your
land use that would,
4 to 13 dwelling units per acre of single-family homes. So it doesn't typically include multifamily.
so then would the use of this property as presented then be contrary to what the land use map is?
Correct. That's why in our statement in the report, we state it's generally consistent, but warrants an amendment to the future land use map.
Okay.
Commissioner Miller?
I've got two questions. Is that a statutory minimum, or if you wanted to expand that to 500 feet, we could?
Yes, you could expand it, you just couldn't reduce it.
Just out of curiosity.
In this particular case, staff was recommending approval. Typically, when staff recommends a denial, then we put it as individual consideration. But of course, it's always at the discretion of the commission if they would like to pull a case.
But if it's, I mean, you would think that automatically trigger a, or how many boxes have to get checked?
Well, we consider a lot of variables when we make a recommendation. One variable is the future land use plan, but we also look at the existing development of the area and the development trends, and so that led to our recommendation of approval for this particular item.
And just to clarify further, during Plan CC, when we talked about all these future land use that we were putting out there and changing, it's not a formal change, just a proposed idea of what we'd like to see in that area, so we can see where growth or utilities, infrastructure, roads go. So it doesn't really change anything, it's just a recommendation. Is that correct, just so everybody can?
Correct. Future land use, to the customers that come in, I call it our crystal ball. It's what we envision for an area of the future, but it's not set in stone. Very much, area development plans you're looking at a macro level, and zoning cases are the opportunity to come down to the micro level and make a decision if a use specifically will or will not work at a specific site.
Mr. Buck?
Just to further expand, yeah, your area development plans are just that, they're plans. They're not binding on anything. They just give direction.
Perfect, thank you. Commissioner Schrader?
So the adjacent properties that we've had come across this on this same issue,
Sure.
Generally one of the big issues is that the two tracks to the north of the drainage channel and this one immediately adjacent to this property that's to the south of the channel, as I recall, all of them have only access to Cimarron as far as vehicular access. And this one potentially, I guess, could tie into the neighborhood to the south, although I'm sure that's not desired by those residents if that were proposed. But when the factors that when you consider this, since several of these properties have gone up in density along Cimarron, does that even account? Do you take into account the presumed density, vehicular density that's going to be raised when
Absolutely,
these
good question. So when the previous case was done back in 2017, I put together a slide essentially projecting maximum density of all the apartments in the area. Where do we stand today and where this case would add? So the blue box located in the center is the additional 240 units that this case is potentially going to build at maximum build out. So as you see, the majority either face Lipes or they face Cimarron. Now, fortunately, Cimarron, being an A3 arterial, is specifically designed to handle that level of traffic. So I would say I would be a little more hesitant if it was facing Lipes, as that's currently only a 2-lane road, versus Cimarron, which is a 5-lane road and is designed for that level of flow.
And how much property in this, between Yorktown and Saratoga fronting Cimarron remains undeveloped?
I would say there are very few pockets left. The majority is built out. Veterans Memorial was kind of the last large tract of land. Above that is Brockhampton Estates, and then going further north to the Walmart area. So outside of the few remaining very small, maybe 1-acre pieces at the corner of Saratoga and Cimarron, there's no longer any blanks, so to speak.
And the Brockhampton development is already platted out, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Fully built.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Zaguni?
Yes, sir. Could you please tell me how many units per acre RM2 zoning gets?
That is 30 units per acre maximum.
What about the height restriction?
The height restriction is 35 feet. Now, a good thing to keep in mind is that we have a separate section of the UDC that talks about height restrictions when you're adjacent to single-family homes. So it'll sound a little convoluted the way I'm going to explain it, but in essence, every building starting at 12 feet and up, we do not count the first 12 feet, but at that 13th foot and up, you must set 2 feet for every 1 foot away from the setback. So if you're up 20 feet, you discount the first 12, therefore you have to set roughly about 8 feet off of the line, if my math is right. But now in this case, the discussion that we have, and yes, it's from the property line rather than the structure. So the discussion that we had with the developer on the very beginning stages of this proposal was that they would place all of the 3-story units along the interior property line, since it's essentially phase 2 of the existing apartment complex. Therefore, you will only have 2-floor units or 2-story units closer and then separated by a parking lot. So what you'll see on this site plan, let me go back. I'm sorry. 60, I'm sorry. 60 is the maximum height for RM2. So as you see on the site plan, the 3-story units at worst are going to be on this section. These are the single-family homes, lots that consist of Cimarron Lakes, I should say. So you're going to have a separation of parking, and then you begin the 2-story units.
Is this proposed plat, is it something that the developer is intending to do, or is there going to be any changes into it once they get the zoning, in case they do?
This site plan is from the developer, and it does mirror pretty much what was done with the project to the north. There are fewer units.
So how much distance is from the buildings to the property line, where the parkings are?
So every parking space is roughly 18 feet deep, and your center aisle is going to be 24. So that's, let's see, 32, 60 feet. Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dibble?
On the site plan, though, this zoning case doesn't actually restrict those buildings to be 2-story, correct? I mean, in theory, if we grant the RM2 zoning, then they could come back, revise it, and say, you know what, we thought we were going to do 2 stories, but now we need to do 3 stories, and they would have the ability to do that.
Then they would need to meet those restrictions, or they could sell the site and not choose to build at all. That's an absolutely true statement. Zoning never binds you to a specific site design outside of a PUD or a special permit. So in some cases, somebody achieves a zoning, they sell the property, decide to go a different direction, or as you said, they may change their design, but that means they will have to meet then the 2-to-1 setback. So it's
And would that be an option that, I mean, sounds like the developer's saying they're going to do 2-story. Could we put a restriction in there that says that no higher than 2-story if it's on the ones that butt up to the?
It would be only through a special permit. So you would essentially have to grant a change of zoning to either leave it FR or RS6 and then add a special permit to allow the use of apartments with X amount of conditions.
Any other questions for staff? This time we'll open the public hearing for item 11 and let the applicant speak first, please. If you would, state your name and your address for the record.
Yes, my name is John Bell, 13750 Primavera in Corpus Christi. I'm representing the applicant who is Cypress Brook, has the property under contract. And with me this evening is John Bellinger, who is the Vice President of Cypress Brook out of Houston. Cypress Brook, about 3 or 4 years ago, built the project right next to this development on 10 acres immediately to the north, which is the Ariza development, and really is like the development and wanted to do a phase 2, and so this project is the phase 2 of that development. In talking to them, we wanted to be proactive about addressing concerns because we are abutting a residential neighborhood. And so we've reduced the number of units. Instead of having almost 300 units, or 240 units. As has been explained, the row of buildings that would be closest to the single-family development will be limited to 2 stories in height, and the nearest building is about 60 feet. In addition to the parking lot with the double 18 feet, 24 feet, 18 feet, there's also a 10-foot planting strip along the buffer. The code does require a buffer yard because we would be adjacent to the single-family residential. And in that buffer yard, we must plant canopy trees on 30-foot centers in order to help create the visual obstruction above the fence. Now, in addition to that, we will be building our own fence, privacy fence. A wood fence is required under the code. The HOA has an existing privacy fence that's facing the units, the houses, and our privacy fence will have the facing to our parking lot. But you'll have 2 fences. I was speaking to Mr. Elizondo, one of the neighbors this morning. He was concerned about, okay, well, the setback is nice, but you'll have cars, parking against the unit. Will that get headlights, into our homes? And I said, well, we'll actually have 2 fences, 2 privacy fences, against each other. I don't think there's going to be any chance of that, plus the landscaping plan that the developer has in mind. We mailed out notices to all the residents within 200 feet in that subdivision on September the 1st because we wanted to show this site plan. We wanted to show the plans, the 2-story limitation, and what we were doing to try and be proactive and trying to help them understand. Because when they get the famous or infamous yellow notices from the city, it just says a zoning change to RM2 is coming, which you don't know what that is. And so we wanted to go ahead and show them what the plan for development actually is. And so we have been trying to address whatever concerns come up in allowing this development to proceed. It will be connected in the rear to the Phase 1 property. And so they'll kind of have shared access and circulation going around. But this will stand on its own. As you can see on the site plan, it has 2 entrances on and off of Cimarron. It does have a rear connection to the Phase 1 development. And as you can see, we set the buildings back. As I commented in the letter we sent to the residents, even if this were to develop as single-family residential, they could have 2-story houses right behind their fence, looking in their backyard. And this actually pretty much assures nobody is going to be looking over their fence in the backyard because of the setbacks and the canopy trees we've planned to do that. And so we are committed to making this work to be a good neighborhood. The quality of development, I'll have to point out, is evident in the Phase 1 project. This will be identical to that. It is a mid to high market residential community, Ariza, good quality construction, a stand-up project. So that people can see, what you see is what you get. This is not a, come on, believe me, we'll build something that looks nice. You can see what it looks already. I would be happy to answer any questions, and if I don't know the answer, my client knows all of them, so we can get that worked out for you.
Thank you. At this time, are there any comments for Mr. Bell? I see none. Thank you.
I have one question.
Commissioner Miller.
Under this
240.
So it's right at.
If, we've talked to staff about a special permit, and that would be fine. The reality is this project has been preliminary designed already. It's conceptually been approved, by the client. They haven't gone to the final drawings yet, but obviously this is what they're planning on building. It could be a special permit where you have RM1, which is multifamily but a little bit less, but if you could bump it up to allow it to 240 units on the condition of no, buildings that would be two-story that are nearest to the single family. The code really covers everything else so far as the buffer yard with the canopy trees and all of that. The screening fence is mandatory under the code regardless. All that's there. The only embellishments we've done on the code are limiting ourselves to the 240 units and providing the setback with the two-tiered concept of just two-story buildings on that side.
Parking count is accurate.
I tried counting all those spaces, and it looked like a whole lot more spaces, but I'm not sure if the architect was actually to scale on his parking spaces in there, but it will comply with the code easily for parking spaces. It's interesting, in these units, they are planning garages. If you might have noticed in the detail, there are going to be 20 or 30 garage apartments with also some breezeway connected covered parking apartments as well. So in addition to the surface parking, there's some garages located up in there.
Thank you. No other questions?
Okay.
Anybody else wishing to speak on item 11? Yes, please. Yes, sir. You might have to, come this way, please. And if you would, state your name and address.
I'm James Alaman. Address is 6538 Miranda. My house actually butts up, or is on that. I got the yellow form. So I would ask, so I'm also speaking today, also not only for myself, but for the association. I'm actually president of the association, and I don't know if the confusion, but we got this letter on Wednesday, last Wednesday. The timestamp when they mailed it was last Friday, but then there was Labor Day on Monday. So that was a huge hindrance. And then we had a couple of residents that showed up at 5:15, and they were told that, the meeting wasn't going to be at 5:30 after all. So I was hoping that maybe we could table this for not only the confusion, because we don't have the amount of people that want to speak today. I know 5 people who, I think they may have signed in. Well, I know 2 people signed in and left because they just didn't, had other obligations. But 3 other people said they didn't realize they just, while the other people were leaving, they didn't sign in. So I just don't think we'll get the exact, people who want to come and speak are going to speak. So I don't know if that's something that's an option. I mean, I hope so. This is a pretty big deal, and we would love the fact that, we're an hour off, and also, again, we didn't get this till Wednesday. I didn't get that white form that they sent out. It was nice. It was, but I got it from my neighbor that I made a copy. I don't know what happened to mine. So I don't know if that's a possibility. I would also like to table it to see if maybe we can talk to the developer to be a part of this design, because, we do have some questions on it. But if that's not a possibility, then I'll continue talking. And again, with just the limited number of people that we have, I just think it's not a fair representation. And I know it's so ridiculous because they say we had no opposition, but I have another person's, and the people that are here, they have theirs. They didn't know if they should mail it because we just got it so late. And then if it gets in the mail, we didn't know if that was going to be counted. And so I called the city and they said, well, you can bring it in and turn it in. They said I can gather other people's. And then, but the people who left, the 5 people I told them will come, I don't think they dropped it off because I knew that the meeting was going to be late, so I didn't get here till 6:30. So I don't know where those 5 yellow pieces of paper are. So I just don't know if we want to continue or.
So there
if we
are
can-
several options for that. I'll let you continue your comments as well. There are several options. We can table, we can approve, we can deny, we can approve of conditions and so on. So, my question for you, do you have comments right now regarding?
Well, yeah, yes.
I'd like to, I know the time's up, but I'd like to hear that portion of it since.
Yeah, and I don't know if I get an extra 3 minutes for the people that are not here or but somebody said I can maybe distribute some of these photos.
Sure.
Okay, so let me, well, here.
Hand them to your left, please. Thank you.
So that's 1 set, that's, and I made 9, because somebody said there was 9, but. So again, because of the limited amount of time that when I got this and being able to do that, that is just a picture blown up from, I should have kept one, but one of them is literally from my fence. So when I hear that they say, well, we're only going to build a 2-story building, and then they have that nice, because of the code, they have that visual going down, like when you look straight out, right? So even a 2-story, because those other pictures are from their 2-story. I literally went to their 2-story balcony and took the pictures facing that way. So those are the pictures. I didn't blow them up or anything. I just took a regular picture. The next, so I have also, I'm going to do some drones from exact where they're showing at that height to show. So what I'm arguing, or the reason why I'm opposing it is for the invasion of privacy. And again, maybe we can talk to them because I even hear that they can deviate from that plan. So I don't know how you build, or if they're going to buy a tree tall enough. So when they're talking about the nice buffers and the landscaping, I don't know how they're going to bring in, I guess you can, a tree tall enough and mature enough to block the view from even a 2-story view that's not going to overlook everybody's houses. And it's interesting, you can even see the neighbors across, like my neighbors across the street. You can see into their front yard. So, would love to try to be, if we're going to push this through and against, my privacy and my decline in property values, I would love to be a part, or the residents in that area would love to be a part of, okay, making sure, we are building to that, talk about, the setbacks, talk about, again, he's just saying, hey, we'll have a double fence, the car's lights are not going to go in there, which, I don't know how that works. But, again, I don't know how you build a tall enough tree to block the privacy. So I don't know if there's other screening mechanisms. I don't know if there's a bigger wall they can build. I just don't understand how we get past the privacy. And then I think we have another person who's going to talk about, the diminishing value. I mean, there's builders, on here who, that lot, they haven't even, that plot, they had, are not developing because they know it's going to be a hard time selling a house right there. But yet we're going to put this, 2-story and then I guess a 3, like this 3-story in front, you're still going to be able to see through over. So I guess I appreciate they're going to build a 2-story right here, but the 3-story is still going to be higher. I don't understand how that concept quite looks.
And I appreciate your comments for the privacy part of it.
Yeah,
too,
and that's the main, again, unless we had the principal at Veterans, my daughter goes there, it's overpopulated in the street on Cimarron, but I know it's rated that way, but, the main issue is the privacy. I don't get how we get over the privacy issue. We all knew that plot was going to be, rezoned, but never in my wildest dream when me and my builder were working together, did we ever imagine it was going to be go from, rural farm to multi-level, 2, 3-story, right behind your backyard. I mean, we thought, and George, George Thomas.
And thank you for your comments. I've had, I got your gist of it. Hang on one second.
Yeah.
Commissioner Zargini, sorry.
Yes, I do have a question to ask you. Mr. Bill mentioned that they sent you guys a notice on September 1st to have a discussion regarding their plan and proposal. Did you
Yeah.
ever have a meeting with them?
No, so that's.
If you would address us, sir.
Yes, oh, sorry, no. So it was a letter that I didn't get, but I did see, I think Joaquin has it. So I've seen the letter, I made a copy of the letter,
So
but.
you have not met?
Excuse me?
You have not met with them to
No,
discuss?
not at all. No, nobody, so I got literally their letter first, and then like the following week, on Tuesday or Wednesday, I got the yellow letter.
Okay.
So it was almost like, is this already, I mean, is this a done deal? I mean, is this already,
I appreciate your comments
Okay,
very
thank
much.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on item 11, please? Thank you.
So I guess that was a no on the table?
We're not to that point yet. We're just taking comments. Thank you. And your name and address,
Thank you for
please.
allowing me to speak. Tony Elizondo, 6506 Miranda Drive. I also got the letter that was dated on the 1st, and then the yellow letter that was dated on the 3rd. Got this one Wednesday of last week, and then this one Friday. I was in Houston watching the Astros lose, but I was there. Just had a chance to read over it. I have it as sent in as opposed, although I talked to Mr. Bell earlier today. We clarified a few things. Here are some of my concerns. One is I just purchased this property in April for almost $500,000. I had no idea they were going to build apartment complex behind me. It is a gated community, so access in there to the property it's not going to happen. For access through our gated community to the apartment complex won't happen. I really appreciated Mr. Bell's letter. It was really explanatory. One thing that does bother me is the parking lots that he has, or the parking spots that he has, do face my property, which means I will have at least 4, if not 5 cars in my backyard. There is a 10-foot buffer, but 10 foot is from here, from me to you. So you got a motorcycle out there, a big Texas truck, you're talking lights, you're talking noise, you're talking sound. I mean, it's just, had I known that that's what I was signing up for, I probably wouldn't have purchased there. I didn't know, hindsight's 20/20, that's a different story. But that's my main concern, is the lights, the noise, the privacy. I too took a picture of my backyard to the complex that's there now, and you can see how close it is in proximity to my house. Obviously, these will be a little closer. I appreciate the landscaping they're going to do, the trees that they're going to try and put to guard my privacy. I too would like to be a part of this planning session if it goes on. I'm not, again, I'm opposed to the way it's laid out now. I'm not opposed to the project. I just want to be part of that. If there's a way we can build some other type of wall that's going to help reduce the noise, help reduce the lights, especially for the nurses and doctors that work graveyard shifts there, people that work in the oil refinery that live there. And although it's sent out to the few houses that back up to that development, you're really going to affect the entire community's value on their property, because it goes from a gated community to a gated community next to an apartment complex. And I'll give the developer credit. The apartment complex that he has now is very nice. I have no issues with it. It's going to be a really attractive apartment complex. But those are my concerns of where I live now and where I purchased. So just wanted to make those notes.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 11? And your name and address, please.
My name is Joaquin Granados. I live on 4006 Rioto Creek Drive. It's right next to Miranda, so my house is about 60 feet from the property line. My garage faces, like when I'm in my garage, I can see the 3-story apartment complex, and it's huge. And I can't just imagine another one that much closer, 10, 60 feet from the fence line, because
I can see all those, when I'm working out in my garage, I can see all those windows looking at me. Told my wife, she's very, very upset. She's horrified. She's like, oh my gosh. She's the type that likes to be safe, secure. That's the reason why we built the house in 2019. It's a gated community. We think it's safe for our family. Now she kind of fears that all the people that in the apartment complex, is going to be a lot of traffic, probably increased crime. Pretty much, I guess I'm here to voice my opinion against it because of all those things I just said. If this apartment complex does get passed on, I really do want to be involved in trying to maybe change some things around. Maybe they can build the apartment complexes without the windows facing us. Maybe they can turn it sideways so the windows are facing each other. Well, why don't they stare at each other versus staring at us over our fence line? My wife and I have been planting trees for the past, 2 weeks. I've already bought a bunch of trees, and I'm already starting to plant them. And, we're just trying to do our best we can. We moved in there 2 years ago. Like I said, she's very, very upset. I'm a licensed real estate agent. I've been a real estate agent for 15 years. I know the ins and outs of showing properties adjacent to, apartment complexes. I show houses. We walk out of there. It's like a 10-second showing. Oh, there's a apartment complex in the back. Let's get out of here. I've been on the side to where I'm trying to sell a house for a client who has apartment complex in the back. It's just the value of the properties diminish. I mean, you're talking about house selling for $250 on one side, $275 on the side of the apartment complex, and the other side they're reaping the rewards of selling their house for $350 and $400,000. It's that big of a difference. So that's what I wouldn't say in fear of, but that's going to be the reality. That's going to be the reality of us as homeowners. Diminishing the value of our homes is going to go extremely down. Not to say that his product, he does build a nice apartment complex, but it's going to be staring right at us. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Again, I just want to reiterate, there was fire.
I thank you for your. I can't accept those comments. Thank you. Anyone else at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment portion. Entertain any more comments from Planning Commission or a motion?
I have a couple of questions for Mr. Demas.
Yep.
Mr. Demas, if we potentially task with looking into a special permit with the client, is that structuring it such that it requires two-story units or limits it to two-story units on a portion of the property that is the units that front this half, the residential half? Is that something that can be structured with language very well, or is that pretty problematic in this type of development?
I wouldn't say problematic. You could establish that within X amount of feet of the shared property line that there shall be no units greater than 2 stories in height.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, would that be tabled and discussed with you and the client, or would that be presented tonight would be easier?
I would assume it would be tabled, and I'm sure
Yeah, to get the language proper.
the client will Mr. Bell want to have a conversation with those concerned neighbors.
Sure.
And we can draft a special permit pretty quickly, email it to him so he can have that conversation before we proceed on.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions for staff or motions? Or questions for their development?
I have comments and then a motion.
Commissioner Miller?
So whenever I bought my house, it backed up to Airline, and across the street from that, it backed up to Seaside Cemetery, so I knew that there was never going to be any development.
I would say so.
And I knew the neighbors were going to be pretty quiet. But just for everybody, especially around Veterans Memorial, if you've built your house in 2019 or 2018 or 2017, or since that particular high school was built, you got to know that you're exposed to some more dense development around an anchor light Veterans Memorial High School. But with that being said, I move that we table this item to allow further input from the residents within the notification area.
Can you just assign a date
Um,
to the next meeting, or?
To the, table it to the next meeting? Is that going to give enough time, 2 weeks?
Yes, I can draft a special permit by tomorrow and have it to Mr. Bell.
Okay. So table this item until for 2 weeks until the next planning commission meeting.
I have a motion to table.
I'll second that motion.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. On to item 12, please.
I can read those into the record. So starting with item 12, we have Park Springs IHS Block 1, Lots 1 through 3, a final of 3.87 acres. This is the sixth request for tabling. Item number 13, if you'd like, I can read them in bulk, and then if there are questions, if that's simpler.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Item number 13th is also the sixth request for Padre Harbor Unit 1, a final of 22.14 acres. Item 14 is the fifth request for Padre Harbor Unit 2, a final of 25.24 acres. And Padre Harbor Unit 3 is item 15 with a final of 60.9 acres. And those are the listed time extensions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on items 12 through 15?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Commissioner York.
We've seen Padre Harbor several times, and I think we understand that those are tied to the Park Road 22 bridge, which is now moving, so I assume the development's moving. Can you remind us on Park Springs, item 12, what was the issue with that?
That is a discussion about wastewater. So originally, the Planning Commission and City Council approved a waiver for construction of wastewater, and now the applicant, in order to entertain potential buyers, is looking at options to actually connect to wastewater. So instead of going onto septic, which we encourage connection to our system, that is what they're working through at the moment.
And just for the record, the conversation with Andrew is we're looking at possibly making these extensions 1 year, not 6 months, so they don't come back for 6 extensions. So that could be coming up in the near future. And there, as long as there's movement. In the past, we've talked about how many extensions can there be. As long as there's movement, we've all kind of sat down and said, okay, these are the reasons, so we see that. So just comments that have come from previous planning commissions.
And does staff have a recommendation on this? I don't have mine.
Once, I would say, just to be cautious, once we get above 3, we tend to leave it in the hands of the Planning Commission. It's kind of baseball. It's 3 strikes. So the first 3, for reasons, makes sense. You have stormwater issues, public improvements, all types of things that occur. As the chairman mentioned, as part of the UDC text amendments, we look at things like notification areas, or we look at things like the length of time extensions. But at this point, we would probably defer a recommendation to the Planning Commission itself.
Okay. In your opinion, has there been movement on this?
The one thing that does give me hope is the connection to wastewater. That's something we want to see. That's part of being a modern city. We don't want to have too many septic systems out there from the obvious environmental reasons, but it also has a drainage issue. So we want to encourage connection to our in-ground wastewater system. So as long as forward progress has been happening as far as estimates have been going back and forth and potential reimbursements from the trust fund. So if that option is there, I'm going to hold out for it.
And I believe the note also was the waiting on a tenant. They had a tenant in mind. That was part of the comments in the letter from Urban. So just if that helps. Any comments further on 12 through 15? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing for items 12 through 15. Are there any comments from the public, please? If you would, state your name and address.
Xavier Galvan, 2725 Swantner. I represent the client from Urban Engineering. This is going to be the 6th time extension. As Andrew mentioned, the city does like to see movement, and there are a couple of items that have been done recently. There's been a utility and right-of-way permit issued, or not issued, but submitted to TxDOT, and so that's in the process. And my understanding is there's a wastewater master plan amendment also in the process. And I just wanted to bring that to y'all's attention.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir.
Chip Urban with Urban Engineering, 2725 Swanner, speaking on items 13, 14, and 15, Padre Harbor, units 1, 2, and 3. Mr. York's correct. It is tied to the Park Road 22 bridge. Timing of the project was tied to completing construction of the improvements around the time that the bridge is going to be completed. We have construction plans complete. They're going to be going out tomorrow for bids, and anticipate being under construction within probably a month and a half. So this will be the last time I'm here asking you for this one.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion on items 12 through 15.
Is this a group?
We have it as a group, unless you would like to pull one off separately.
No. I make a motion that we approve items 12, 13, 14, and 15 as presented.
Or second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 16, Commissioner York will be abstaining from 16 and 17.
So on the next two cases, items 16 and 17 are tied to the same plat, which is Country Acres subdivision lots 4A and 4B, a replat of 2.34 acres, and then an associated wastewater waiver request. So I will quickly go through that presentation. So as you can see, the subject property is located in the Cal Island area, roughly at the intersection of County Road 48 and Farm to Market Road 1889. As you can see, the dashed red line is the proposed path to connect to the existing wastewater system that is out there, and this is based on the existing master plan. Now, the proposed include 500 linear feet of PVC wastewater line with 2 manholes. It would roughly equate to 500 feet, the red line showing at the bottom of the screen where the actual connections would be made. And as far as for the estimate, this is just giving kind of the data behind, including the slopes and maximum capacity. The estimate's hard to read, but it's looks like 275,000 in some change. Now, the plating requirements, this is text right out of the UDC explaining the options and essentially the findings that have to be met when requesting a potential wastewater waiver. And then these are the standards that are accepted. But the term that, of course, the UDC likes to use is called reasonably accessible, and that's where what we like to call is the 1,000-foot rule, and that means that you have to be a minimum of 1,000 feet away from potentially connecting to a wastewater system for it to be quote-unquote unreasonably accessible. Now, as far as what is needed, the waiver specifically for construction would be to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. This is separate from any potential fee waiver that has to go through a separate process to City Council. So based on the information submitted, staff is recommending approval of the waiver for wastewater construction, but disapproval for the exemption from fees.
Thank you.
And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing for items 16 and 17 at this time. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing for items 16 and 17 and entertain a motion or further comment.
I'll make a motion that we approve items 16 and 17 as presented by staff, which is a waiver of the construction, but a disallowance of the fees.
All right, do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. On to items 18 2019.
Permission to proceed. For the record, David Stallworth, Senior Planner. I'd like to introduce items number 21PL 1116 and 21PL 1116 Waiver Request. This is to accommodate the development of a final plat for Hemingway Townhomes Unit 1 with a corresponding waiver to, for relief from current sidewalk standards as listed in the UDC. The Hemingway plat is roughly 8.85 acres, and their potential yield is going to be 59 lots, 48 of which are going to be single-family attached lots. Staff is recommending approval of the plat. However, with respect to the waiver, what they are requesting is relief from the sidewalk requirements for internal residential streets. They're asking for, I believe, 50-foot typical cross-section, but with no sidewalks attached to it. There was also a second waiver request on there that we had also added on because they are proposing a 60-foot or C1 collector along Silverberry, which is going to be renamed Gelhorn, but they're also indicating a single-loaded sidewalk, whereas typical conventional construction calls for double-loaded sidewalk. So let me run through the regard to the exhibit over here. It shows you the general area and the vicinity map, which is located at the southeast corner of Greenwood, which is an A2 arterial, and Silverberry, which is going to be renamed Gelhorn under this plat. Currently, there's 3 plat requirements. Requires installation of public improvements or financial guarantee during platting. One of the things that they will require as a public improvement is going to be the installation of sidewalks, and the sidewalks minimum have to be 4 feet in width, 4 inches in thickness. This next slide shows you what they can build for a local residential street. There's 2 classifications. One is an L1A, which is a 50-foot right-of-way with double-loaded sidewalks, and they have an intervening parkway. The next one is an L1B, which also has a 50-foot sidewalk, but it has tight or 50-foot right-of-way, 24-foot or 28-foot pavement, and tight sidewalks on both sides. These are the proposed cross-sections, which show no sidewalks for the interior residential streets. In regards to waiver number 2, they're also going to be required to build a 60-foot wide collector, which consists of a 40-foot right-of-way, double-loaded sidewalks. In this case, they're proposing same pavement width, but only single-loaded sidewalks, which is going to be on the development side, or actually the south side of the street. This is a proposed cross-section of what they intend to do. This gives you a street view from the southeast corner of the property, or correction, the northwest corner of the property. You're along Greenwood and Silverberry. This gives you a perspective looking eastward down Silverberry, which is also going to be renamed Gelhorn. Gives you existing conditions. Right now you have a TxDOT drop yard on the north side of the property. You have agricultural land, which is going to be the subject site on the south side of Silverberry. As you go further on, you'll see some buffer trees or buffer landscaping, and within that intervening area, there's going to be utilities, both underground and aerial. Next slide shows you a depiction of what what types of waivers that they are asking for. Waiver number 1 is going to be no sidewalks along internal private streets, which are internal, as indicated in beige. Waiver number 2 along the right side of the plat is indicated in gray, and they're asking for a single-loaded sidewalk along the south side of the street. There's 4 criteria that need to be proven in order for the commission to to grant approval of this. The first one being not detrimental to public health, safety, general welfare. Conditions that create the need for the waiver do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. The application of provision will render the subdivision unfeasible, or the granting of waiver isn't in conflict with either the comp plan or the purpose of the ELD or the UDC. So in analyzing the application, I would call attention to page 5 of your staff report, which gives the actual letter of justification for the actual sidewalk waiver request for relief from double-loaded sidewalks for internal streets. Generally, what they're saying is granting a waiver is not detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare. The granting a waiver would not be in substantial conflict with the comp plan or the UDC. And also, conditions that create the need for the waiver should not generally apply to other properties. What staff has analyzed in looking at that letter is that the applicant provides little to no justification for the request. It's just merely regurgitation of criteria. The details of gated access to be employed are offered, or no details on gated access, which is the primary premise on which they're asking for gated access or correction for the relief for sidewalks. There's no guarantee on access reliability that's offered in the letter. On-street parking, if it's allowed on there, is going to force pedestrian activity into the travel lane. The applicant hasn't provided any alternative pedestrian solutions. And gated communities, in this case, are not a unique animal. They're a matter of preference or marketing. The waiver approval will not guarantee or promote housing diversity as claimed in the letter. It's not going to increase or stabilize investment capacity. And we also believe that it's not going to encourage community identity or placemaking, especially if the premise is going to be, going to provide affordable housing. And affordable housing generally isn't something that you find in gated communities anyway. With respect to the waiver request for number 2, there are some factors which support the request to have a C1 collector with only single-loaded sidewalk. There aren't any destination points along the north side of proposed Gelhorn Street that would warrant a sidewalk. The second factor is the placement, the current placement along the south side road, or south side of the road, is more appropriate because it's on the development side, which is going to be of more beneficial impact. The conditions that create the need of waiver do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. To the north, there's an equipment yard and buffer screen along the north side of this road segment, whereas on the other side, there's developable area. And finally, the installation along the north side of the road segment of sidewalk is going to be of little to no benefit. Of course, there are some factors against this sidewalk waiver request. Gelhorn is a functioning C1 collector, so the code does require you to have double-loaded sidewalk. And also, there's none of the exceptional conditions in administrative exception which would apply to this case. So based on the factors that we've analyzed over here, we recommend disapproval of waiver number 1, and we also recommend approval of waiver number 2. So that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for staff regarding items 18 and 19?
Just a confirmation that the one staff's recommending approval on is the single-loaded sidewalk on the collector?
That is correct, okay. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Miller?
Could you go back to the slide illustrating waiver number 2, please?
This one right here, sir?
The illustration of the drawing. So right now, Gelhorn is the road running behind Walmart and the theater and everything there?
And textile, yes, sir. Currently, it's called Silverberry.
And so this would, the UDC requires sidewalks on either side of that road?
Requires on both sides, yes, sir.
And right now, there's some canopy trees, some buffer trees that are planted in that landscape median.
That is correct.
Could you go back to the picture of that? It's really hard to see because it's dark. But is there room for a sidewalk there?
Trees on the left side behind
the trees are on the
TxDOT.
left side. There may be room for it, sir, but the thing about it is it might also compromise the existing growth that's also there. Second, why we felt that it wasn't really necessary is because the proposed sidewalk is going to be on the development side, which is going to be more beneficial to people that are actually going to be living over there. Whereas opposed to on the north side, you have semi-industrial use. You have the buffer landscaping, you have all the utilities which are already existing over there, both underground and aerial as well. So we figure with the amount of investment that's going to be taken to install a sidewalk versus the amount of public benefit that it's going to occur, we figured it wasn't practical. It would actually be contrary to one of the findings that's required in the UDC.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing for 18 and 19. Anybody wishing to comment? If you would, state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Good evening, gentlemen. Roberto Santos Williams, a new addition to the Corpus Christi population at 7418 Lake Livingston Drive. Don't have it memorized yet. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thanks to Development Services. We've been working on this for a few months now. I want to just mention a few other recent townhome developments over the last several years that don't have sidewalks and have more narrow roads than ours, and some don't even end in cul-de-sacs that are 90 feet wide like ours. Ours is a much higher than code, much higher than the quality that has been seen here development. So I'll say Shady Creek Townhomes, Tuscany Townhomes, Barclay Cove Townhomes, Dawson Ridge Townhomes, Downing Street Townhomes. None of these have sidewalks. The roads, again, are not as wide as ours, and they do not offer a cul-de-sac or green areas or amenities like ours. These are all, I won't say that we're not going to offer sidewalks or one-sided sidewalks. What I need is just adaptability. So I'm requesting this waiver for adaptability, for the price. Maybe we go one side. Maybe we go gravel, not a traditional sidewalk, because we have a jogging path around the development. This is purely for adaptability. We are trying to reach, again, I think the term affordable housing was misunderstood. This is a housing that is affordable, or more affordable housing, or they call it, is it blue collar housing? We're trying to reach, stay close to the 200 price point. And it makes it hard for us with time, and then with we're hoping not with the sidewalk matter, but certainly having to sidewalk the other side of a road that's already built, which is Gelhorn, which Walmart and Texas DOT, and them, they did not do that back then, so they obviously had that waiver. But we do intend to sidewalk our side of Gelhorn, so I'm happy they recommended that. So the 48 to 59 lots, it's really 48 homes to 59 lots, makes it sound a lot more packed than it is. Really, those are green spaces. They're cut-throughs for the jogging path that I mentioned. There are 2 pools, a playscape for kids, and a basketball court / workout area. So additionally, our roads, I think, are 4. Chip Urban back here, he can answer the technical questions, but they're 4 to 6 feet wider. Additionally, we do have the green space to provide the sidewalks. We do have it. We just don't know how we want to use it. We could, again, ideas are gravel, rail ties, something a little more modern, more aesthetic. So that's about all I wanted to say. Additionally, this is 3% of the entire Boca development that I'm heading here. It would, again, I mentioned last time, I don't think everyone that's here now was here then, and some that were here or not. But I mentioned last time it would not behoove me to request something of you, promising a certain product, under-deliver, when I'm 3% done with what I'm attempting to do. So I hope that you'll trust me that I'll deliver a good product to the people, a marketable, sellable product. Again, remember, I have to sell to someone a house that they want, and I can't do that if it's dangerous. I can't do that if it's ugly. I can't do that if it's too expensive. That's all I'll say. I'm looking forward to approval. I'm looking forward to getting to work and breaking ground if you guys will vote yes. So thank you.
Also, any questions for the applicant? None? Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Murph Hudson, Urban Engineering, representing the developer. Just a couple of brief comments I wanted to make about the development and the scale at which we're trying to bring it to the public. Yes, we want the flexibility to have or not have sidewalks. That's a decision that hasn't been made at this time. And this, keep in mind, this is a private gated community. The public's not going to be allowed in the community, and the city has indicated that they want sidewalks on both sides of the street for the public good. Well, this is a gated private community. The developer should be allowed to use his own judgment and his own marketing to either sell a community without sidewalks or sell a community with sidewalks. But that's his choice in a private gated community. And so I just wanted to make sure that y'all understood that. The city, for its part, does have an obligation to try and protect the public health, safety, and welfare. I certainly understand that, but that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create something that is unique and different in the city, and that reaches a price point to where people can get into that and have that for themselves, their own private gated community with an HOA, and it's up to the developer to sell that. And so I just want you to make sure y'all understood that. Thank you.
Any questions for Murph?
Are these streets private streets? Or will these
Private
be
streets. They
privately
range-
maintained?
Privately maintained concrete streets. Right-of-way widths are 50 foot as a minimum, go up to 60 and 70 foot. We have lots of landscaping on the streets and the hike-bike trails that Roberto was speaking about. So yes, it's all private streets, private gated community.
But these are individually sold.
They're townhome lots that will be individually sold.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public on 18 or 19? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and entertain a motion and further conversation.
I have a couple of questions for staff.
Please.
Mr. Demas, so this is not a, let's see. This is not a special permit in the way it's structured or a PUD, correct? It's
Correct. It is just your standard plat, no PUDs or any type of additional townhouse type of zoning or special permits attached.
okay. So when we've had some of these cases brought up of prior townhome developments where the city was then became or was asked to deal with streets at some time later in these developments because each units were sold privately, even though they were essentially buying into some sort of an HOA maintaining those situations. We don't have any situations where the city has gone on and essentially taken over those, do we? Or?
I would wish to say we didn't, but there are a few out there. The most infamous is Village on the Green. Village on the Green was one of the first PUDs ever passed in the city limits back in the late 80s, and the Homeowners Association ended up going defunct. So the city had to come in and take over maintenance of those streets. Very similarly, those homes do not have sidewalks either. So as urban renewal happens and you have families cycling in and out of subdivisions, of course, now the times I've driven through that subdivision, you have kids in the street on their bikes or walking, or even mothers pushing strollers. And very similarly, they have a central green space. The difference is that we're absolutely all for green spaces. We have every confidence in this proposal, but it's the old saying, we have to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. So we ask for sidewalks and we ask for these type of facilities in the case that we have to maintain, but also in the case that minds are changed. What if it does not become a gated community and ends up being open to the public? You're going to need sidewalks. The residents themselves will need ways to have connectivity to get to these facilities. We don't want them to go from blue-collar workforce to a neck collar because they've been hit by a car. We want to keep them off the street. And that's the reason that we're passionate, to the point that council has adopted policies like Vision Zero, in which we are to design all roadways for those complete streets style, which means for bicycles, for pedestrians, and for your drivers.
Okay, and then my follow-up question is, the developer is, this is a piece of a much larger tract there. And on the Silver, or, I'm sorry, what's
Gelhorn is
Gelhorn.
the proposed name change.
That is a curb and gutter street, correct?
Correct.
And it's not slated for reconstruction or anything?
It is not on a current CIP schedule, correct.
Okay, and so with in mind that this is going to continue development in that area back there, access along this collector to major shopping district at Walmart and everything. I mean, granted, it's a very car-driven area, I get it, but what was the rationale for the recommendation to not have the sidewalk on Gelhorn?
So Gelhorn is buffering along an industrial area, first and foremost. I can tell you firsthand because that's my Walmart, so I've driven that road many a time, and you do not probably want pedestrians along that street. It's extremely busy. A lot of people use it as a shortcut. That's also to promote connectivity within the development itself. So having sidewalks internally and looking at the preliminary plat with its master plan, which we're all big fans of, is to have folks travel inside and use their collectors to travel up between the Walmart and the movie theater.
And we are recommending the sidewalk along the one side,
Correct.
the development side.
Oh.
So it's only
okay.
a waiver for the sidewalk on the northern side, which abuts the yard.
The TxDOT
The
side.
TxDOT yard.
That's waiver number 2, Sean.
Right. No,
Yes, sir.
okay, so I
So
didn't
they're-
think they were responsible for that anyway. In other words, if they're
Well,
not developing that other
That
side,
whole right-of-way, they're going to be reconstructing, so,
the entire, okay.
yes.
Okay, so I was reading that as a half, I'm sorry, in the illustration, I was reading that as their half of that street, so
I think we
they're
have a-
reconstructing the
I
whole
believe we
thing.
have the cross-section.
I agree
Yes.
with you. Staff, can y'all confirm that? Because I thought they were just building a half street as well.
Yes, David was just correcting me that it would only be on the one side that the development is absorbing. So it's currently an access easement
Yeah.
and is now going to be part of the development. Therefore, they would be responsible for all of the associated infrastructure, including sidewalks. So we would not be recommending along the TxDOT side, which is the industrial side that has the tree-lined portion, but on the south side that is fronting along the property to give that accessible path. So I do stand corrected on that.
Slide shows the proposed.
So essentially sidewalk on
Reconstruction.
this side, but not on the opposite.
So they're
Looking
going to
for
be
the north arrow.
constructing a 40-foot back-to-back, so it's a reconstruction of the road.
But wait a minute.
From this, it looks like they're only constructing half the street and they're leaving the other half existing.
It says the existing street
Well,
section,
it says
they're adding
new-
13 and a half new paving and curb.
New paving curb.
Where's the sidewalk indicated here?
It's on the left. The north is to the right.
This is in section.
north
you're
is to
drawing
the
a plan,
right.
Jeremy. This is in section, you're drawing a plan.
Clear screen.
But the sidewalk goes on the expanded side because the expansion of the road isn't going into those trees.
That is correct.
It's going into the
gonna be on the
developer's
development
property. And then the sidewalk would be beyond that in the developer's property.
Correct, behind the curb, correct.
Right. Everybody keeps saying on the left, but I'm seeing it to be on the right. Yeah. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay.
Right side.
Sidewalks right here.
Okay, moving this along, the sidewalk waiver for the interior is being requested but denied by staff, and the single sidewalk on the new street right side or left side, is being approved by staff as a single sidewalk, not double sidewalk. So any other questions for staff to clarify?
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud. If not, any other motions or comments?
Make a motion that we deny request number 1 for the interior sidewalks, for the interior sidewalk waiver, and that we approve the waiver for the single-loaded sidewalk on Gelhorn.
We have a motion to approve it as presented by staff's recommendation. Do we have a second? Have a motion, no second?
What was the motion again? I'm sorry.
To approve it per staff's recommendation of denying the sidewalk waiver, so it's requesting or requiring sidewalks on the interior, and then approving the single-loaded sidewalk on the main street. That's the motion. Correct? Correct.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Excuse me. Sorry, just to clarify, denying the first waiver, approving the second one.
That is correct.
Okay, just making sure, sorry.
Okay. Chairman Baugh.
No.
Vice Chairman Dibble.
No.
Commissioner Schrader.
Yes.
Commissioner Zarguni.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner York.
No.
Salazar Garza is absent. Commissioner Gonzalez.
No.
Motion does not pass.
Okay, at this time, do I have another motion for items 18 and 19?
I'll make a motion that we, on sidewalk waiver number 1, that we approve the waiver, approve the waiver of both 1 and 2. Item number 1 being contrary to what staff recommended.
I have a motion to clarify, a waiver for the sidewalks on the interior, and then an approval for the single-loaded sidewalk on this street.
That's correct.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Chairman Baugh.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Dibble.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Opposed.
Commissioner Zarguni.
Opposed.
Commissioner Miller.
Opposed.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
Salazar Garza is absent. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
And Commissioner Mandel is absent. Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 20, please.
Okay, so our final presentation of the evening, thankfully, is the Ed Rochelle Foundation, a rezoning from the RS6, RM3, and CN1 districts to the CI Intensive Commercial District. The property is located in the older part of the city, west side. This is just west of the Crosstown Expressway, State Highway 286, south of Agnes Street, and they are small properties that wrap around the former Lamar Elementary School. Now, the request for the rezoning is for the purposes of constructing small parking lots to serve the city offices that are going to be moving into the Lamar Elementary site. Those are both Corpus Christi Police Department, Metrocom, which is also known as your 911. When you call them, those are the folks that answer, and a few engineering offices are going to be moving in as well. So this is a quick site plan to show essentially how many spaces are going to go onto each site. Again, you have call center, you have some folks from CCPD, and those from engineering, as well as a couple of vehicles from Code and Park. The central core, but for CCPD, those are going to be gated, so there will be future partial street closures in order to secure those parking spaces. Of course, we want to protect our police first responders, because there is a requirement that they have secured parking whenever we store their vehicles for obvious reasons. Now, considering the zoning pattern and adjacent development, you do have, again, a mix of surrounding land uses. There are both vacant lots and some existing single-family homes, as well as St. Joseph's Church, which is to the east. And as you can see, there is a mix of both the old RM3 zoning dating back to 1947, and then you have a series of RS6 rezonings that happened in 1980. For those that were on the board at the time, or the commission, I should say, there was a rezoning down the street as well as the Lamar rezoning a few years back. The reason there's such a drastic difference between, of course, the establishment of RM3 and 47 and 1980, why there was such a large rezoning is, at the time, of course, taxes were being assessed based on this entire area that was zoned RM3. So the neighborhood got together, down-zoned most of their area to RS6 in order to get back to single-family taxing from the appraisal district versus multifamily. So that's why you see a series of 1980s. As far as existing versus future land use, the existing land use is, of course, public, semi-public, since it is a former site of a school. You have a mix of vacant lots and single-family homes that are in the process of being demolished. On the future land use, of course, at the time the future land use was adopted with Plan CC, this was still, of course, mostly single-family residences, so that is why you see a mix of medium density and high density residential. In this case, the Lamar site will actually convert to the same blue color to represent a government or institutional use. As far as utilities are concerned, of course, it being parking lots, there's not going to be a high demand for utility service to these sites outside of irrigation that'll be for the landscaping to be installed. Now, as far as public notices that were sent out, we sent out 129 notices. 17 were returned in favor. Of course, they were from the applicant, and you had 3 in opposition from 2 separate owners, which essentially equates 1.45%. Now, as far as staff is concerned, we are recommending denial of the CI district, in lieu thereof recommending a special permit. That special permit will have a series of conditions. Of course, the only use that'll be allowed is the accessory parking lot for a government facility. We are requiring landscaping, of course, vehicular screening along the rights-of-way. There will be a required buffer yard. Of course, they must meet the same lighting standards as the rest of any type of commercial development, which we do treat parking similar to commercial, meaning the maximum height of any light standard is 15 feet, so you cannot have a 30-foot pole light right next to your residential properties. Of course, items 6 and 7 are standard language that we apply, consisting that your special permit is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. You have to abide by all the other requirements of the UDC, fire codes, and building codes. And then lastly, the time limit, that if things aren't getting underway within 24 months, the special permit will expire. Or if the use ceases to exist, 6 months after that, the special permit will expire. That is to protect the underlying neighborhood, so they will keep that RS6 zoning. And you'll probably see the same special permit for the previous case.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions for staff regarding item 20?
I do have a...
Commissioner Sheldon, Schrader, sorry.
So I wasn't quite sure from the plan exactly how this I was trying to envision what this use is. So you have you basically the occupied facility that's attended here is a call center, correct?
It will be a combination of the existing Lamar facility will, yes, have the call center, we'll have Metrocom, and we'll have CCPD, as well as offices for engineering services and a couple for parks.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like a small civic
so that's
center,
the
so
need,
to speak.
That's the need for the outer lying parking lots that are
Correct.
fragmented. Is okay.
And of course, call center and you'll see these 2 sites as well as this site are going to be gated. The reason for that is they will have surplus vehicles for CCPD. We'll have SWAT vehicles. So of course, there are some rules that from ATF that they have to secure these sites anywhere you have firearms, so no one can get into those vehicles. And then 2, of course, we want to provide a safe environment for when police officers leave the building. They do not have to go out into the public. They stay within the compound before they access their vehicle. Again, it's more of a safety measure than anything.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner York.
Just want to clarify or ask a question, I guess, on the buffer yards.
Yes.
The buffers that are recommended in the special permit, are they the same as what would have applied if it was commercial intensive?
Yes and no, which I know is not much of an answer, but the reason that we got very specific in the buffer yard description is on the way some of those spaces are oriented. Some of them are at 45-degree angles. So you can't quite get that 10-foot space, but we wanted to make sure the same point requirements are going to be there, and that's why we increased the minimum fence height to 7 feet. So very similarly on the previous case where you heard about headlights getting in between the pickets of the fence, that was a long discussion when we had the original EA meeting for the design of the facility to make sure those pickets were as tight as they could be to prevent any type of light penetration. On top of that, why we're requesting landscaping. So any light that may have a chance of getting through, landscaping will diffuse that.
Last question on because this is a change in what was requested, as the applicant okay with this? Have they been?
Yes, pretty much from the onset, we as staff let them know that we were going to take the special permit route. And the reason for that is not that we don't see commercial development happening in the area at some point in the future, is that special permits give us that extra little bit of ability to give specific conditions. So we know we're looking out for the neighborhood at the same time of providing the use that is needed for the city facility.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing for item 20. Anybody wishing to speak? Can you state your name and address, please?
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Reina, 2314 Morris Street. I'm really here just to talk about what exactly this is for the neighborhood. We too did receive the notice, but it was kind of late and so didn't have much preparation or questions. I've been in contact with the foundation and I just really don't understand what the use is and just need more information. It said, the notice said it was going to be into a commercial district. And so I don't understand if the property I was intending to build on it, if it's allowed to be built because the foundation said I could not. And they took down the fence as well on the property and said, oh, it's okay that we own that now, which I don't see how. It's an empty lot that I have and offered for them to lease it if they wish. So I wanted to know, is it something that are we as residents have to sell it, or because they're saying that they're just going to take the property. So I'm a little confused on that. And then they said, well, you don't have to, actually we'll build around and we're going to put a fence up anyways because police cars are going to be there. So I just really need like exact information. And the special permit, I don't have any information on that. So I don't understand if that's changing now from the CN1. I was going to ask if this particular zoning can be it seems that they sent out over 120 flyers and only literally 20 people responded to it. So I was going to ask if they could, is there more time allowed to kind of oppose it, to kind of get more of an understanding on what exactly is going on? Is the property, are you even allowed to build on it? Because they're saying you can't build on it and they're taking down stuff already and already infringing on the property. Like, that's just mostly where I'm at with that. And then I think, because my mother owns the property and she can't be here, she was asking the city, they said she could build on it and it was grandfathered. So can that, my particular lot or her particular lot basically be, can it be sold to a different company if she doesn't want to sell it to the foundation? Is it going to be grandfathered in because it's so old, from 1912 actually? Any of those kind of things I want to get answered. It's just really confusing when talking to that particular company because of everything that has happened. And that area is such it's an area that's not going to be an affluent area. So are they just pushing the families out and saying, hey, maybe you can get an area, your property somewhere else? Because if you really look at the property value and you're pushing out families, there's realistically nowhere else these families can go for reasonable housing for the amount of what is offered in a decent neighborhood in the city of Corpus Christi at this time, based on what the property value is worth. So, and the same thing for the meeting. The meeting, we were never given any type of information that it was going to get rescheduled or anything of that nature. I wanted to also ask if it's possible if you can have these virtual by any means for people that are disabled that are not be able to attend this particular meeting. And that's really about it. Is it something that has to be sold because they're saying it has to be? Is it something that can be leased out? Just really need to know what's the intent, because they made it sound like the city has known about this for a while and this is the first time we're kind of hearing about any of this getting some type of rezoning.
Sure, and Andrew might be able to help with some of the actual zoning portion. It was requested as a, go ahead, Andrew, I'll let you
Sure.
run through that.
So
part.
first and foremost, if it's your property, you are not obligated to sell by any means. The foundation does not have what we call eminent domain authority, meaning they can't take a property from you. It is yours to own. If you so choose to lease or sell, that is completely your decision to make. Again, no one can force you to make that decision. The project will essentially be a series of parking lots to serve offices that are going to move into the old Lamar Elementary School. So there won't be any structures built. It will just purely be parking spaces on each one of those small pad sites. And if there's any, these requirements that you see on the screen are essentially to shield the parking away from the adjacent single-family homes. I think the information you probably received from the city earlier about could you build on it, and what grandfathered means is that if it's what we call a non-conforming lot, meaning it's less than what the minimum size or width of a lot is, but it is platted. So if you have lot 1, block 2 of, Hackberry Acres, you're allowed to build a house on it with reduced standards. So I'm thinking that's probably the information you were given from city staff, is that you can still build a house on it. It won't be the widest house since it's a narrow lot, but you are still able to construct a single-family home on those lots.
So is it going to be changed into commercial, or is that mine exempt?
The only
2,500 square foot lot.
The only properties that are requesting are those shaded on the back of the notice. So only those small pad sites where they're going to build parking spaces is up for discussion for a potential rezoning. Your property is not part of that discussion. The ring that's on the back of the notice is just to indicate those that were noticed in the area, but it does not mean that they're going to be rezoned.
Can you issue out another one for individuals that submitted that? If we
I
don't
can,
have a copy of
what
that?
I'll do is I'll give you my card, and if you'll send me an email, I'll show you an exact map. I'll send that to you.
And is there any reason why they're saying like we don't have a choice and they're presenting it that way to the?
I'm not sure why that information would have been forward. The goal at the end of the day is once the rezoning and small plats that have to occur as part of the process, the city will be taking over the property, so it will no longer belong to the foundation.
And my clarification is the foundation owns the lots that we're going to have.
They own the lots today.
Correct. So the ones that we're requesting, they are requesting to be rezoned, let me get my wording properly, rezoned from residential to commercial, they already own those lots. So nothing else around it, just those lots that they own. And the city is saying, we're being presented with, we won't do it commercial, we'll do it residential with a special permit that allows a parking lot, and that's it. So there won't ever be a building there in the future, there will never be a restaurant or a bar or a gas station or anything like that. It'll just be a parking lot, and if it ever ceases to be a parking lot, then it goes back to being a residential lot, so to speak.
Exactly.
And
So the address I'm speaking of, basically, were they telling me they're gonna put a fence there? Or what's going to happen? 'Cause it's
I think that may
already
be some clarification.
the
There
in-
is can we go back to that slide, Andrew,
Sure.
that shows those lots? It might be easier to show you we can point and click to the areas that are specifically.
So we will
On
go
the-
back to the site plan, and this is my card.
Thank you.
So let's say you live at a house here, just for example. The fence that they're talking about will wrap around the perimeter, but will not build on any of these properties. It's just to say that this property will now have, shielding or screening, what we call, from any adjacent property. Similarly to the project down the street, there will be a fence that will wrap around and shield in these areas to the adjacent properties.
And it will only be in the colored areas, like the
Right.
green, the blue. Those are the only lots that we're going to be considering today. So if you're right next to that lot, yours is not part of it.
I can't tell, there's no addresses on here, so I can't determine. I know that on the deed, it says that it's lot 10, but it's not even labeled on here, so I can't
But
determine.
This is Morris Street that runs right through here, and this is St. Joseph's here. And of course, this is the former school site in the middle. So if you're along one of these properties, that is where either you won't have screening at all since you're not adjacent. Only the properties adjacent will be required to have a fence, and the foundation will be building the fence.
And how do I, stop them from impeding or going already on the property and stuff like that?
I would imagine
pulling
code
down the
enforcement
fence
or
and
law
already
enforcement, code
into
enforcement, but I don't think I would understand that they would be developing onto their lots, but if you do have concern with that, code enforcement, even law enforcement, can come out there and help you stop that.
Okay.
And we'll hear from the owner, the applicant, in a second. He might be able to speak to that.
Okay, thank you. And that's what I explained to them, and they said that they would get a survey out there to kind of just nip it in the bud.
Stake it,
and
mark
it
it,
never
sure.
happened. So, yeah. Yeah.
And what we're tasked with is making sure that the city recommends something that we agree upon that is safe for the community, safe for your land and not impeding. So that's what that's why they went from intensive commercial to a residential with a special permit. So we're not able to say, it's your property, we can't do that, but we'll hear from the applicant and maybe they'll be able to address some of these.
Can you tell me what day that was submitted to a special permit?
It was recommended from staff today for that.
Okay.
So it was presented out to the public as intensive commercial, but it's come back
And
as,
what is the norm to let the neighborhood know that?
as it was presented 16 days prior, with the mail, there's a notice that sits out in the actual lots themselves, with signage.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Sounds like you might be getting a new fence.
I don't know. I wouldn't count on it because that was like a year ago, and here we are. I mean,
Well, part of this
with this.
special permit would have to be.
What the special permit is trying to protect
Right.
the neighbor properties is what they're
The
going
whole
to.
intent of it is to provide separation between.
Okay.
And just so you know as well, you can further follow up with Andrew on the card he gave you, and this goes to city council. So if you find out that there's more information, and you still feel like you need to go talk, there is another round that will be noticed, and you have more opportunity.
Okay. Thank you all so much.
Awesome, thank you. Any other comments?
Irv Hudson, Urban Engineering, representing the applicant, and just wanted everybody to know that the applicant and the city have been working together since day one on this zoning. We did not want to go for commercial intensive, but that's the process that we have to go through is to get the special permit. Fences will be put up when parking lots are built. Those plans are currently in the architect's hands and our hands and in design, so that will all come eventually. If you have any questions, we're here to answer.
To clarify, you do own all the lots you plan on rezoning?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing for item 20 and entertain a motion of further discussion.
I'll make a motion that we deny the C1 district, however, approve the residential with a special permit.
I have a motion for approval as as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And they will be able to help clarify any other questions you may have. All right, moving
Just
on
to add,
Yes,
sorry to
please.
interrupt, we're slating this for the November 9th city council meeting, so you will be receiving a notice fairly soon in advance of that date, 16 days also.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, moving on to director's report. Anything to report?
Nothing to report report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew and I have also, for future agenda items, have been talking. Have you emailed it out already, Andrew, for the training, so to speak, or the?
Not yet. That's a perfect segue. So Nina and I were discussing earlier of how we would kind of roll out training sessions, and instead of course, boring everyone, for lack of a better term, with a 3-hour session, to break it up into a series. So taking a lesson from Netflix, instead of getting you all in one shot, have a series of episodes where every planning commission, we would take on a different topic. So the next one might be plating. I believe Commissioner Zarguni was asking for plating to be first. So that can be the premiere episode, and then after that, we can take on zoning or public improvements or future UDC amendments and kind of.
And to clarify, this is a kind of a training for planning commission. If we have any questions on what we can approve, what we cannot approve, what we are required to do as part of our role. I know we cannot have a quorum at that time. Is that correct? We have to do this in pieces, or can we have everybody at one? Or?
We can do either or. We can have, if you want to have so many as a group and then we have more one-on-one training, absolutely. I'm free all the time at the office. Or, of course, we can have a formal workshop where we notice and post with the regular rules. I foresee one coming up on special permits and probably fences and maybe a little bit of sidewalk waivers.
And the other one, the reason is during during COVID, the last couple of commissioners that came on board were not able to have a training, so to speak, and that's kind of why we're bringing this back up, so everybody kind of understands exactly what they can and cannot do as members of the Planning Commission.
Correct. It's a new fiscal year, so it's a perfect time to roll out a little refresher.
Awesome.
We would hope for in-person, but if it's more convenient to, again, break it up and have it more one-on-one and do it virtual, we can do that too.
Any other comments? Yes, Sheldon.
To, I guess, tag along with that, is there any, in the UDC revisions, is there anything currently being evaluated or discussed in relation to sidewalks? And the reason I ask, I think this, what concerned me about the particular applicant this evening is they're clearly planning a much larger development, and they're planning to, in other words, I guess the shorter answer is we don't seem to be prepared to deal with these ideas for all these different ideas about how to have public circulate through these developments, and so they're offered as a private development, but if it's truly that at that scale, it has significant public impact as far as if they were to get all those approved or all those sections approved without sidewalks. And so it's setting a significant precedent, and they cited several developments that had been approved without these in the past, and I get that they want to cite that as precedent, not those are all standalone, but in reality those are all standalone things. So we do have an obligation to the public betterment to make sure that the public moving through these areas are protected, not just saying, well, if the developer doesn't want to put sidewalks, let's let them not put sidewalks. And so, but I also understand that, maybe some of these old models when we're dealing with all these much smaller lots for individual homes and things, and we even saw this with the tree ordinance discussion, you've got very little yard, you've got large driveways that are in short distance to the home, and you're trying to get more house on less lot. Maybe this needs to be revisited of how we allow, or how we provide protections for the public, but still allow some design creativity or encourage that, let's say, so that as these new housing models emerge, that they can be affordable. Now, how big a component this is in that, but it's really about the lot size more than, in my opinion, more than whether or not it's really restricting somebody's development to require pedestrian access.
Right, so I'm sure Nina will jump on it, the master preliminary plat.
Right. Well, I think I agree. I think there should be some sort of alternative pedestrian path that could be offered if it's going to involve the entire development For example, a hike bike trail or something like that, that would thread through the development. I mean, that makes sense, but I don't think we had that in the preliminary plat.
Correct.
Now, they're saying they're going to do it, but that was not identified, to my knowledge, in the preliminary plat. But the preliminary plat would be the most appropriate place to identify that, or even through the master preliminary plat.
Which is something we're resurrecting. So it's not something that will necessarily take a UDC amendment. It's more of a how we do process. So exactly procedurally. So using that master preliminary plat, they would have to, from now going forward, and that's a process we're working through of how to resurrect it and make sure it gets implemented correctly, is at what point do you have to spend the money on your utility design and you can stop with the conceptual? And that's pretty much the pushback we get. If we don't want to have I shouldn't say we, the business, the development community doesn't necessarily want to invest the full scale utility layout, all the engineering costs without assurance that the preliminary plat is even going to see the light of day. So I think showing the alternative paths, showing the layout of the roads, and having some form of commitment, even though that master preliminary isn't recorded, at least it's some scale of commitment to say, this is what we're going with, it's accepted by the Planning Commission, and if any change occurs to it, it requires an amendment back through the Planning Commission well before you get to the final. The final should be more of just an exercise rather than making this level of decision at this stage. But again, these are lessons we learn as we go forward. So I think the biggest tool in our toolbox is to bring back the master preliminary plat and use that as that safeguard or that gatekeeper, for lack of a better term.
I agree this probably should have been on their preliminary plat. I had a comment/question. So on this one, I understood that this particular piece, they're saying it's private, it's gated, and that's fine, of course, unless it goes defunct. But from what I remember, their overall development, because it's so large, I think it actually involves master UTP streets. And so I'm assuming that's where they can't say that's private, not put sidewalk. In other words, those are going to have sidewalks, so there will be a pedestrian path through it. But it was a question that I had, is they can't make that private, right? If it's a UTP street, it has to be a public, it can't be gated.
Your collector roads must be open, that they're designed to final traffic. Now, the only way you could close it, and I'm sure Buck will correct me, is you would have to do a UTP amendment to keep that design standard but not have it a public right-of-way.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah.
And that was my question also to Commissioner York point, because I actually drew this for myself a little bit as they were illustrating it. They're talking about a very small piece compared to a major development they have.
Right, that's exactly
And
right.
I firmly believe that having a sidewalk is not only valuable, it's for the safety of people, because these townhomes are going to be sold individually. Therefore, are we just, because it's a gated private subdivision for this area, are we not talking about public safety at that time? Because, there's, 50 townhomes on their phase one that they wanted to sell. But more importantly, what happens to the larger scale of this project? I mean, at what point, I guess I agree with Commissioner Schrader also, is that we'll be prepared to have this kind of a plan and discussion of what to expect as far as all these waivers that comes in, because to me, these conversations are going to be continuous with every developer coming in and wanted to waive this sidewalk waivers. And because one thing that I made a note on is they were talking about, from their engineering and also the actual applicant, is talking about high-end quality project but want affordability. There's a little bit of a difference between these two things.
You could just do it very slow.
And the whole idea behind sidewalk waivers, in my opinion, island, for instance, well, nobody else has sidewalks on the island.
And I
so
get that.
Why should we put the sidewalk there? Or nobody's got sidewalks in Country Creek, why should we put a sidewalk in Country Creek? Well, that's.
But here
now
it
we
is.
have a new development, and this is the first posted development, and we're creating precedent. Sidewalks.
Well, and one comment though, we don't set precedent. That's one thing we've talked about in the past. Just because we approve one time doesn't mean we have to do it the second time. So. Sure, I get it. I get it.
There's no sidewalks, so why are we gonna make this guy do a sidewalk?
That's actually a good point. Can put in maybe in our training thing, but whether or not that would have been more appropriate as presented in like a PUD versus because sidewalk waiver does seem to fit more hey, we've got roadside ditches, we're in Flower Bluff, you know, there's no sidewalk anywhere near us or the island, but this, it may have been more appropriate with a PUD.
And this is the, you know, the policy versus practice. We all have the UDC and we, you know, tolerate how it's written, but when the rubber meets the road, we will get pushback at times, and that's not to pick on any one developer of what do I have to do at preliminary versus what do I have to do at final. Sidewalk waivers are not a requirement per code at the preliminary phase. I think that's where a UDC text amendment comes into play of setting what you have to do at step A versus what you have to do at step B. They can push and say, well, this is a preliminary, it's not recorded, I'm not bound to anything, I want to push the sidewalk waiver to the final, and they have every right to do so. Now, that's where we explore the practice, and if it works, then we should leave it as, but as we're now seeing this is the, what, 5th or 6th sidewalk waiver coming through, maybe we should have a text amendment to say, you should handle it at the preliminary plat or you don't move forward, and we just say up front. That way, the master preliminary plat covers everything, you're showing how everything connects or giving an alternative design, period, instead of waiting to the final. Sure.
It's a different story. It wasn't done 30 years ago, but now I think we need to figure out waiving all this sidewalk. I don't know.
Andrew, I appreciate that if we've can find a way to somewhat formalize this in this master plan concept of reinstituting that, I think that would go a long way in this because, I mean, just by definition, allowing this stuff to kick down the road is not design. I mean, it's not designed. Then it's a reactionary rather than being part of a larger plan. So, if there is a plan for truly improving these areas, these neighborhoods, their connectivity and their walkability and everything, you have to have some sort of plan up front. Maybe not every single thing needs to be decided, but it's something that can be reinserted when each of these things come up so that we're reminded, or if they span 5 years and you've got a different commission up here, even for council, the same thing is that they see that what the plan was. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
One other thing I'd want to ask if we can put in this training, because I'm not really clear on it, but like tonight we had applicants and a lot of back and forth, and I know there's rules on how that goes, and I don't think we're supposed to answer their questions or I've heard them say that before when whoever, you know, in maybe it's council or even in planning commission, but I know there's specific rules, and I don't really know exactly how we're supposed to do it. So if we could throw that in the training, I would appreciate that.
I think it's at the discretion.
That's at the discretion of, that's at the discretion of the commission. So, but I would say it's more of a matter of practice of time management. If the commission so wishes to have a conversation with every public commenter, you could have,
50.
Getting out here at midnight, especially for the Flower Bluff zoning items, but it's too.
So it's okay that there's no rule or law. You know, we can answer their questions, go back and forth, and okay.
Right, because it's pertaining to the.
Not that we
agenda
want to
item.
all the time, but sometimes, like tonight, it made things easier.
Well, it's pretty hard to change. Later, they all want their. That's when it's going to become a real problem.
Correct. And it is good when we set the timer too for conversation and we can end it. I mean, when there's a lot of people, we try and set the timer and just move on, especially with the same comment every time. So.
Yeah, the time's great. The reason I'm asking is I think in the past, at some point, I've heard one of the past commissioners, or like I said, maybe at council, say to someone in the public something to the effect of, we're not allowed to respond directly to you, where you make your public comment and then, something like that's it.
Yes, that was back when Mr. Ramirez was chair. He was.
So that was
a little
just the
more-
commission policy?
That was more commission policy. He was a
Okay.
little more militant about it, but there's not an absolute rule that you can't, but very much like Buck said, it's time management. And once you start down a road, you don't want to deviate. You might be able to say, this meeting, there's only 5 people that showed up, no problem, but if we know there's a controversial zoning case, I can't advise you to do or to not, but keep in mind that even at 3 minutes, some of these council meetings have gone 4 hours just on public comment.
But it is nice.
Absolutely, it's an opportunity.
And whenever you, like somebody said, whenever you are to a CN1, and fully understand what that is. Okay, this is what we're going.
Which, perfect segue, not to interrupt you, we're now editing the notices to add more information, so try to shorten some of the legalese that has to be in there as much as we can, and add more information. So, for instance, if this project was new, it would say FR to RM2 for a 240-unit apartment complex. It would just give that little bit more information that will hopefully give the public just that much more to go off of. Well, hopefully they'll be consolidating. We have a new UDC consultant coming out. We had our kickoff meeting last Friday. One of the key items, of course, is touch on Article 8, so everything plating that you ever wanted to know, that's what we're tackling first. And then looking at the number of zoning districts we have, because we're pushing 30, and that might just be a few too many, and we have options to maybe we don't need a CN1 and CN2, or we don't need a CG 1, 2, 3. We can start to find common threads and consolidate.
Anything else for the good of the commission?
I was just going to make one more nuance as far as the dialogue from the commission to the public is, that dialogue is fine as so long as it's an agenda item. We can't have somebody come in here and talk about, I don't know, something, squirrels or something that's not even on the agenda.
Correct. Thank you for that.
Trees, but not squirrels.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank y'all.